Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is James Roberts. Welcome to the second edition of 2013 of the show Effective, Efficient, Affordable, and above all, accountable to you. The show that shines a light on those matters of Winstead's government that so many people would rather see hidden in mystery. As a reminder, the views expressed on this show are those of myself, James Roberts. They do not represent or seek to represent the views of the Winchester Board of Education or the Gilbert School Corp. Last week, we did a high-level look at the serial financial catastrophes that have befallen Winstead in the last several weeks and months. We reviewed those catastrophes, the fact that we are essentially close to bankruptcy, and we reviewed the idea that they were due not to some dark, mysterious forces, not to some accident, not to financial irregularities, not to Henry Centrella, the finance director, but instead were avoidable, predictable outcomes of a series of incredibly ill-judged decisions by the town manager and a majority of the Board of Selectmen. This week we will ponder a simple but fundamental question. Is the town manager doing his job? Should the town manager keep his job? As a programming note, we are filming this show during the afternoon of Tuesday, January the 15th. Tomorrow, Wednesday, January the 16th, at just about the time this show airs on Charter TV, the town attorney will brief the Board of Selectmen on the status of the audit and the status of our finance director, Henry Centrella. At the same time, the Board of Selectmen is due to provide a form of review to the town manager and to presumably debate his future. Now, I do not know what the status of the audit will be revealed to be tomorrow on Wednesday. I have no inside information, no inside scoop. I expect the update will be that we are out of cash or close to being out of cash. I expect the update will be that neither our Board of Finance, our mayor, or our town manager have any real grasp on the financial affairs of our town. I expect the update to be grim, ladies and gentlemen. As to Henry, I hope that the worst that he will be accused of is taking unorthodox and possibly unauthorized measures to pay the wholly legitimate bills of the town. I would be surprised still at this late date to learn that Henry Centrella has developed a taste for fast cars or faster women. But I do not know, ladies and gentlemen. But I do hope that the answer is that he undertook heroic efforts to keep us afloat, which efforts might not have been entirely authorized or entirely orthodox from an accounting perspective. But we shall see. On the fate of the town manager, I think there is far greater certainty. Selectmen Fracasso and Albanesius have called very publicly for his removal. They have stated publicly that his professional behavior has not met even the most minimal acceptable standards of behavior, and for that reason he must go. Selectmen Clausen and Perez have stated, not so much formally but through the press, which is how they usually operate, that they have no intention of firing the town manager under any circumstances whatsoever. Given that Marianne Welcome has effectively handed the reins of the town over to Selectman Perez and her house guest, the town manager, one supposes that this set of events will result in a 5-2 vote to keep the town manager. Hell, they will probably give him a raise. So is the topic of this evening's program, you ask yourselves, an academic point, a waste of our time? I would argue that it is not. We will expect the selectmen to fully justify their views, why he should go or why he should be kept. That will give you the opportunity to judge your selectmen's commitment to the future and prosperity of this community. You will have the opportunity, and I would argue you will have the obligation, to form a view as to whether you think your selectmen are acting in your best interests, in the best interests of Winstead. It will not come as a surprise to any viewer of this show to know that I have a view, a strongly held view. My considered opinion is that this town manager, Dale Martin, is as sorry an excuse for a town employee as ever has been visited upon this community. And knowing my views on Blaise Salerno as you do, those are strong words. I do not know Dale Martin personally. He may be a delightful man. He may have a renaissance intellect, a wonderful sense of humor. I don't care. I care solely about his professional record, his professional actions here in town. His professional record is one of little effort, less success, and absolutely no credibility, accountability, judgment, or moral compass. Those are my views, ladies and gentlemen. I am fully aware that they may be overtaken by events tomorrow. We may learn things from the audit that cause you to change your view, certainly of my judgment of the situation. I am perfectly comfortable with the notion that you may, as of tomorrow, decide that I am totally full of hot air and that my opinions can be comfortably disregarded. I am comfortable with that position because I think the situation facing our town is today so dire that silence is not an option. It is not an option to simply sit back and wait and see. We can either come together and move forward together to build a solution to these problems, or we can remain divided, wallowing in a bottomless pit of filth of our own making. So the town manager, is he doing a good job? Should he keep his job? We should first decide what his job really is. In general terms, his job is to advise and execute. His job is to take the policies as set forth by the Board of Selectmen, largely through their budgets, and actually turn those into a reality, to provide periodic updates as to his success or failures in turning them into a reality, to provide periodic updates as to his financial successes in living within budget, and then to provide the raw data and the recommendations that will allow the selectmen to move on to their next policy decision. From this, it should be understood, ladies and gentlemen, that the town manager is not responsible for policy. We may dislike the town's policy, but that really is not the town manager's fault. The town manager can be and should be held accountable for his implementation, his execution of town policy, his willingness to report on his level of success or failure, his openness to being held accountable. What specifically are the duties of the town manager? Well, 99.9% of those duties fall into one of two areas. The first area is the daily supervision, the daily smooth operation of the business of our town. The plowing of our roads, the maintenance of peace, the putting out of fires, the running of town hall, making sure that there is money available for our schools. He is responsible for supervising the staff, making sure that they are doing their jobs, making sure that they are doing their jobs properly and well, making sure that the doing of those jobs results in the outcome that was desired. His job is to make sure that there are no structural impedimentations to the daily operations of our business. His job is to ensure that every possible aid that can be put in place to assist our operations will be put in place. And his job is to ensure that we have the structures in place that will raise a red flag that will cause an alarm bell to ring if we veer alarmingly off the tracks. Day-to-day operations, getting it done, making sure it happens, that's his job. The second half of his core job is financial and reporting in nature. He is required to report on an ongoing basis what he is doing. Is it working? Is it working as was planned? And if it is not working, how it can be fixed. His job is to understand the soup to nuts operations of our town, how each of the three legs of government interact together. And when I speak of the three legs of government, I'm talking about schools, town, and water and sewer. How they interact, what their respective needs are, how those needs need to be translated into the budget. His job is putting together the nuts and bolts of that budget, making sure that we live within that budget, and again providing the periodic reports that show we are living within that budget. These two tasks, supervising the day-to-day operations, supervising the finances of those operations, and reporting on both, represent, as I say, 99.9% of his job. And that is, ladies and gentlemen, because they represent 99.9% of what the town does. That's why we have a town government, ladies and gentlemen, to do precisely those things. And if we can't get that part right, we might as well pack up and go home. There are some other areas, Winstead specific, that relate to the town manager's job. As you are aware from our last revaluation, our tax base is declining. Our revenues are declining, in the face of which we have expenses which tend to rise. There is a requirement long-term to restructure both our revenues and our expenses to ensure that they will be balanced. Our town manager has a job to provide the raw data so that the Board of Finance and Board of Selectmen can appropriately analyze this long-term problem and to provide the recommendations amongst which the Board of Selectmen can choose, or not choose if they so wish. An analogous duty relates to the collapse of our downtown area in particular. Again, as revealed in the revaluation, we know that our downtown area faces major structural problems. We have people flight, we have collapse of property prices, we have collapse in our commercial core. This is something which long-term we desperately need to address. Again, the town manager's job is to pull together the raw data to enable the Board of Finance and Board of Selectmen to appropriately analyze this and solve this. And finally, the town manager is the face of government here in Winstead. He provides the credibility for our town. The credibility for our town for the employees, I beg your pardon, for the voting public, and for the outsiders. So with that definition of the town manager's job, how is he doing? Day-to-day operations, making it happen smoothly, ensuring that there are no glitches, making sure that glitches are fixed and are reported to the Board of Finance. Well, not so good, ladies and gentlemen, not so good. First of all, the town manager failed to prevent Mayor Welcome from spending the fund balance as the first official act of her administration. The fund balance, you will recall, is the way that we pay for daily operations during the lean months of November and December before we receive our state grants. So as the first official act of this administration was to essentially deprive itself of the means of funding its basic daily operations, a decision which the town manager failed to counsel against, either because he doesn't understand how those operations work, or because he just wasn't engaged mentally that day. And predictably, deprived of the fund balance, our operations have not been financed. The town manager has sat by and watched bills go unpaid. Phone bills, gas bills, oil bills, insurance bills, bus driver bills, medical insurance bills. $4 million worth of bills have piled up in a gigantic heap on his desk whilst the town manager has simply sat there. Has he taken any steps to fix this problem? No. Has he taken any steps to disclose this problem? No. As of today, the town manager has still not disclosed the scope of this problem. The only detailed information we have received to date has come not from the town manager, not from the mayor, but from the school board. The town manager has not disclosed the scope of the problem, his failure to pay bills for a period of several months to the tune of $4 million to either the Board of Finance, the Board of Selectmen, the public, or our vendors. Now, the town manager has already made it perfectly clear in a lengthy screed, the tone of which alone should have had him fired from any other community in the country, that none of this is his problem. That his failure to pay bills, his failure to fix the failure to pay bills, and his failure to disclose the failure to pay bills, that he is not responsible for this. The fault, he has said, lies with his staff. The fault, he has said, lies with his bosses. The fault, he has said, lies with us, the voters. And the fault, he has said, lies with the big abstract you. The fault is not the town manager's, says the town manager, for not paying bills, for not coming up with a solution, and for telling no one, for trying to keep it a secret and predictably failing at that too. Now, the Board of Selectmen seem equally happy to throw someone under the bus. In their case, it looks likely to be the finance manager, Henry Centrella. Now, as we've already said last week and again today, I do not believe Henry Centrella is responsible for the pickle we find ourselves in. I believe that the problems we have are the entirely predictable and quite avoidable outcome of a series of incredibly stupid decisions made by our town manager and our Board of Selectmen, or at least a majority of our Board of Selectmen. But let's play the game of what ifs, ladies and gentlemen. Let's play the game of what if Henry really were responsible for the huge pile of $4 million in unpaid bills that the town manager is stuffing into every nook and cranny in Town Hall. Let us play the game. Let us assume that back in October when Henry Centrella was thrown out of Town Hall, because yes, the same Henry Centrella who we are blaming, supposedly, for all of these problems, has not been allowed near Town Hall for 3 months now. But let us assume that when he was thrown out of Town Hall, he left, followed by a cloud of Benjamins, banknotes flying in the air, his pockets stuffed with every dollar, quarter, dime, nickel, and penny that we possessed. Let us assume that Henry has developed a taste for fast cars and loose women. And let us assume that Henry absconded with every single penny the town possessed. Now, once again, this is a hypothetical. I do not believe for 1 minute that this scenario is true. But in that case, we might legitimately say that Henry were responsible for the failure to pay $4 million in bills. But there is nothing, ladies and gentlemen, there is nothing that Henry said or didn't say, did or didn't do, threatened to do or threatened not to do, that would have any impact or could have any impact over the ability of the town manager to speak out. We know this because the town manager has been speaking out against the explicit instruction of the town attorney, the repeated instruction of the town attorney. The town manager has been running around Town Hall and town generally, explaining how Henry Centrella is responsible for all manner of ills and will shortly be arrested. The town manager has been practicing his speech. Book 'em, Dano. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I am not from these parts, and I don't watch a lot of TV, but even I know what book 'em, Dano means. The town manager clearly has not lost the power of speech. So even if you will believe, ladies and gentlemen, that Henry Centrella really did abscond with all of the money from Town Hall, Henry Centrella cannot be held accountable for the town manager's inexplicable failure to run to the Board of Selectmen and say, we have no money, we cannot pay bills, no tiki, no laundry. And it's that failure to disclose which is the key issue here, ladies and gentlemen. Because had he disclosed the problems to the Board of Finance, to the Board of Selectmen, we could have done something about it. We could have negotiated with vendors. We could have raised taxes. We could have, heaven forbid, provided taxpayers with a discount to encourage them to pay all of their taxes up front. Now, I acknowledge some of these some of these solutions are more painful than others. Some have expense associated with them. But they are solutions. And we couldn't avail ourselves of these solutions because the town manager wouldn't tell us there was a problem. So even if you believe that Henry ran away with the money, and I don't, Henry is not responsible for the key issue, which is the failure to disclose the problem. Whether you call it fiddling while Rome burns, whether you call it moving the chairs on the deck of the Titanic, it is clear that history has not been kind these last 2,000 years to such flagrant inaction in the face of crisis. So, daily operations, grinding to a halt, bills unpaid, refusal to disclose, refusal to fix. Seems like a big issue, ladies and gentlemen. Structural controls, financial controls, internal controls. These words haven't passed our town manager's lips in the last several years, until last week. Our finance board actually produces a monthly finance report. It is designed to show us whether we have a problem. Now, I will be the first to admit that our Board of Education's finance report does nothing of the sort. It is poorly constructed and utterly unhelpful. But the mere fact that our Board of Education does it badly is no argument why the town manager should not do it at all. Our town manager should be reporting on a regular basis where we stand operationally and financially. Never once has he suggested that the selectmen review any such reporting. This is his failure. Knowledge of the financial operations or status of the town. Key to effective budgeting. Town manager never asked the question, completely unaware that the repayment of water and sewer bonds needed to be in the budget. Town manager was so unaware as to how town works financially, he allowed Mayor Welcome to spend the fund balance. General budget discipline, living within the budget, crafting a sensible budget. They couldn't get a budget passed, ladies and gentlemen, so they lied to you. They made up a bunch of revenues, they hid a bunch of expenses, and they called it balanced. It was not balanced. Within 6 weeks of passing, he acknowledged it was not balanced and was in deficit. Managing liabilities. Part of the town manager's job, make sure we don't incur liabilities. Spent the last several months running around telling everyone that Henry was going to jail. I don't know what the audit's going to say tomorrow, ladies and gentlemen, and irrespective of what the audit says tomorrow. To run around town telling people that an employee is going to jail is by definition to create a giant liability. The defamation suits will be coming fast and furious. We haven't produced financials in many years, ladies and gentlemen. We are in default on our bonds. We are in default on our bonds. The town manager has been expressly asked this question on numerous occasions and has lied. The town manager has said we are not in default on our bonds. I have an excellent relationship with the cleaners at the Bank of America. Well, we don't care about the cleaners at the Bank of America, ladies and gentlemen. We care about the bond documentation. We're in default. That's $10 million right there. Long-term analysis of revenues and expenses? None. A minority of the selectmen have been calling for it for years. Tell us what size the fire brigade should be. Tell us what size the police department should be. Tell us how to staff public works. 2 schools or 3 schools. Give us the information so we can make decisions. Nothing. Long-term town revitalization? Nothing. Minority of the selectmen asked for $250,000 in tax incentives. It's a good plan. Got no support from the town manager. He went instead for $20,000 in tax incentives and has done nothing with it. No plan has been brought forward for this $20,000. Do we think this town manager has credibility? I do not think so, ladies and gentlemen. His bi-weekly report focuses on bake sales, Boy Scout parades, and movie night. His analysis of the financial problems facing town is it's everybody else's fault. He won't even disclose the financial problems of this town. At no time has he acknowledged whether the problem is $4 million or more. At no time has he acknowledged whether the structural deficit is $200,000 or more. At no point has he acknowledged whether there are other liabilities other than the water and sewer bonds that he just didn't budget for at all. On every measure, the town manager deserves a failing grade. That's the simple reality, ladies and gentlemen. The simple reality. Some people may differ with my interpretation of some of the more subjective portions of his job, but you can't get around the one single salient fact. The town manager sat around twiddling his thumbs, sending emails, whilst $4 million in unpaid bills piled up on his desk. He did nothing to fix that situation. He refused to acknowledge it. He failed to disclose it. In the face of repeated questioning from public and selectmen, he said, there is no problem. You can't get away, ladies and gentlemen, from the fact that this town manager failed to disclose that his core area of operations, that is the daily business of the town, was crashing and burning, that the wheels were falling off the bus, that it was all a big disaster. My interpretation of the town manager's future remains the same. This is the sorriest excuse for a town employee that I have ever seen. But it is your prerogative, ladies and gentlemen, to tell me that I am full of hot air, that you disagree with me. But I challenge you, ladies and gentlemen, if you want to disagree with me, answer me the following question. How do you get comfortable with a town manager who sits on $4 million of unpaid bills and says nothing? How do you get comfortable, ladies and gentlemen, with a town employee sitting in the emergency room in the hospital who is told that their child will not receive medical attention because the town hasn't paid the bills to the medical insurance company? How do you get comfortable, ladies and gentlemen, with a town manager who tells you to your face our bonds aren't in default when he knows that they are? I don't know how you get comfortable with that, ladies and gentlemen. But if you are comfortable with that, acknowledge this fact as well. You are telling every employee here in town that they should put their feet up, open a beer, and stop working. Because based on this precedent, based on your comfort with this town manager, they'll still get a paycheck. You should tell every citizen in town that they should avail themselves of every service here in town and stop paying their property tax bills. Because after all, the town isn't going to do anything with the bills. You're telling every businessman, every employer, every developer, every possible person of credibility looking at Winsted, looking at coming to Winsted to run for the hills. Because there's something funny in the water here, such that every employee thinks they can do absolutely nothing and still get a paycheck. And every member of town government thinks that they will be elected irrespective of where they actually govern. You can reach those conclusions, ladies and gentlemen. They're certainly very different from the conclusions I reach. But if you do want to protect this town manager, if you do believe it's appropriate to lie to us all, if you do think it is appropriate to simply let the town's operations grind to a halt because you just can't be bothered to pay the bills, if you really think that's the right answer, ladies and gentlemen, you better be getting out your checkbook. Because there's going to be a whole lot of taxes getting paid to fix this mess. The right answer, ladies and gentlemen, is that we need to start governing. We need to hold the town manager accountable for the fact that he has not been managing the town. He has not paid the bills. He has not made sure that the daily operations of town can continue. He has not been honest with us. He has not told us that those bills are going unpaid. He has not done the core, key, fundamental thing that we expect a town manager to do, to keep the town going. And he's told us that it's not his fault. It's his staff's fault, his boss's fault, the voters' fault, our fault. Don't let the Board of Selectmen decide simply because they don't want to look bad. They're going to protect a town manager. They're going to give him a paycheck for doing squat. And don't take the argument that this town manager is worse than no town manager. A box of rocks sitting in town hall would have given much less trouble than this town manager has given us. We'd at least know then that the bills weren't getting paid. We would at least know then that he wasn't running around town saying, "Book 'em, Dano." There is only one answer, ladies and gentlemen. This town manager needs to go. And you need to tell your Board of Selectmen that he needs to go. With that, ladies and gentlemen, thank you and good night. Once again, not a very edifying show. But I think it is important that we recognize where exactly we are, where we need to go, how we need to come together to begin to fix the rather epic problems that we face. Thank you and good night.